Alright guys, welcome back to another edition of Tweaking with Don. I think some people would rather see a real game, quote unquote, running on this older hardware. Real meaning a game designed from the ground up with current gen hardware in mind that really does push the limits of what we can do graphically today. And I thought, I've already got this game installed anyway. But it'd be interesting to see how well Forza Horizon 3 runs. So why don't we jump right in here, and first of all, let's try it out at, let's call them, screw it, let's do max settings first. That's always fun, right? Just go through and put it on ultra, right? Just ultra settings, 1080p ultra settings, and we'll go from there. All right, so you see all these different options we can tweak. So we'll probably spend a little bit of time here actually tweaking things. But to start with, let us go and jump right on in. So it runs in DirectX 12, as you can see up in the upper left corner here. Again, I've got my frame counter here going strong. No frame limit on it yet. We'll probably put a frame rate cap on it at some point, I would imagine. I also have the in-game frame counter on the upper right corner you can see as well. So that'll tell you which is accurate, and they're both at 60 right now. I guarantee that will not be at 60 for long. It is quite an interesting thing to see a game at 60 frames per second, and you can already see how inconsistent that line is on the top there with the frames per second. You can tell without a frame limiter in place, your experience would be juddery and very, very unstable. So I think one of the first things we're going to do is jump into the menu, and there is an in-game frame rate cap that you can actually put on the game itself, which is nice. So you can actually tell it to run at variants of your refresh rate. So if you have your refresh rate at 60 hertz, you can have a 60 frame per second counter, or you can have a 30 frame per second limit. If you change your refresh rate rather to 50 hertz, then the frame rate limit will actually change with that and be 50 frames per second. A lot of people, I don't think, realize that. So it's not hard locked at 60 frames. And that's actually one of the things that I recommend people do on desktop PCs. If they're not able to run the game at a 60 frame per second, constant 60 frames per second, then you can change your refresh rate on your monitor or TV. Most TVs support 50 hertz. You can change it to 50 hertz, and then VSync and lock your refresh rate to 50 hertz and 50 frames per second, and it's almost as smooth as 60 frames per second, and you won't have to run it. It's 10 frames lighter, so it's really good for more demanding games, I think. All right, so right off the bat, we're below 30 frames already. So as you can see here, that milliseconds of frame time doesn't seem right. There we go. I was gonna say. Now you can see it's extremely juddery right now. Now we're running at low 20s, okay? So obviously not ideal, right? This is not something that we want to play on a regular basis. And that took a while to load too. So let me go ahead and let's see what we can do here. So let's jump into the settings, video. All right, first of all, I'm gonna guess 60 frames is out of the question. I just don't think that is something we will be able to achieve. So right off the bat, I think realistically, I'm going to cap it at 30. Now the console runs at 30 frames on Xbox One. So the fact that, we're looking at a 30 frame per second experience here is not really a compromise, because that's how the game was designed, in my opinion. It's not the worst thing in the world if you play it that way. So, next thing, I think we'll knock this to high. I'm going to keep this at 8x at least. I could probably go 16 and not have any ill effects. I'm going to turn FXAA on because I just feel like it's something. I just want some anti-aliasing. All right, so we went up a little bit closer to 30, but we're still in the 20s It's really not ideal for this game. You know, racing game experience is not something you want to be below 30 frames per second with. It's around 30 out in the open world, but my concern is this. As soon as I get into a crowded area where things, you know, are more, I don't know, crowded. A crowded area, things are more crowded. Yes, Don. But an area like this with more, you know, demanding stuff going on, I think it's important to make sure that areas like this are running at a 30 frame per second clip. So what you want to do is you want to go from there. You want to always go into one of the more stressful areas of the game that you can find. So for me, for example, like a race during rainy weather with, you know, 8 cars on the track or however many will be there, that's the ideal scenario that you want to use to benchmark and then tweak from there. The most demanding place I can find right now at this moment, obviously, is here, where I'm running at 21 frames per second on high settings. So I'm going to drop, let's see, what should I drop here? I can drop MSAA. It's typically pretty demanding. I'm going to drop that. Now, the console version has 4x MSAA, so right now I am compromising that. Shadow quality is something usually you can dial down to medium without too much of an impact in most games. I mean, especially in racing games, you're not sitting around paying attention to shadows sitting on the ground, so it's not the most egregious sacrifice to make. But still, we're still at low 20s, so that stuff really didn't do much for us. So this is where, you know, if I go to medium settings, I'm starting to compromise a lot visually. I could drop settings, but I think what I'm going to do right now is drop resolution. And now the main thing is I can keep most of my settings toward the high set of the spectrum now, but there is a little more aliasing. It is a little blurrier, but it still looks pretty good. And honestly, look how much closer to 30 frames a second we are now than we were before. You know, we're still dipping down to the low 20s, mid 20s, but at least now we are a little closer to where we're supposed to be in order to get that kind of ideal experience, intended experience, I should say. So, let's go ahead and head out here. As soon as we leave that area, you can tell it's pretty stable. It gets out into the open, and it's you know, it's a pretty solid experience. There are some issues, unfortunately, with streaming. I am running on a solid-state drive, so it is. I think it's just an issue with the laptop not being fast enough. Maybe it's a RAM thing. I don't know. But unfortunately, it's gonna hitch a little bit as soon as you enter like a new place where it starts streaming more stuff. So the frame rate will drop. It will be a little inconsistent. Now you can tell we're using the in-game frame rate limiter, but it's really not doing as good a job as I'd hoped it would. So let's go to. I'm going to knock this back up to high because I'm not convinced that that is a big enough deal. I could probably also drop MSAA altogether and get probably more stable performance. Let's see here. So I hate having to drop MSAA, but I do have FXAA at least. Well, there's a lot of aliasing now. MSAA really does wonders in this game. But you know, I don't think it's that big a deal. I don't think 2x MSAA is hitting the frame rate as hard as you might expect. So let's go back up to MSAA. Let's put that back at 2. What I'm going to try now is I'm actually going to put this at 16 because I don't think it's hitting my frame rate that hard either. let's see. Most of this stuff at high, I don't think is impacting anything as far as 30 frames goes. So let's jump into a race. I think that's one of the most ideal things I could do. Now there is this option here, dynamic optimization. And I could set this to high. And then what it'll supposedly do is it will adjust things on the fly to try to maintain that 30 frame per second update rate. So let's see if it'll actually do its job. Because you know what, if it does its job, then my job is that much simpler, because it takes all the guesswork out of the tweaking aspect of it. Now, you probably are losing quality that you would not otherwise lose in certain places, but to be perfectly honest with you, I'm finding it kind of hard to notice. It looks pretty good to me. So, tell you what, it's dipping down to mid upper 20s. Let's try putting in a frame rate cap on it here at 30 with Rivatuner instead of in-game. Ooh, getting some spikes here. Now you can see that line up top is, well, it was smooth. When it's smooth, it's smooth. Whenever it starts hitching, it really goes crazy. But it's not totally unplayable, but it is kind of frustrating. So I'm going to go back to my own settings here. I'm going to turn off the dynamic optimization. I'm going to go back to advanced settings. I'm going to try medium this time. Now I'm going to put this back up to 8 because I can't stand the lack of texture filtering. It's just something that really bothers me. It does say restart required. You know, I've never figured out, does that mean restart the game entirely, or does that mean just go back out to the menu and then start again? I couldn't tell you, but I'll tell you this much. Let's try going all the way out. Okay. Back here and launching it again. I don't really need to drop resolution anymore. And I think personally, I believe the settings are going to be too low. So that I think I'll have a little bit of overhead to be able to turn some of them up to high. We'll see if my theory is correct. But now I've got the frame rate limiter on. I've got everything on medium. And I'm only going to go up from there. So hopefully I can knock some of the settings up to high and make it look a little better and still keep that 30 frame per second update rate. So let's go ahead and get into the game. That load time was way shorter than last time. I don't know what happened last time. Maybe it's because it's cached, I have no idea. Alright, here we go. Oh, alright.
Hey Don, I've heard a lot of...
Alright, looking good so far.
I think we should try and get...
We're in that crowded area. Remember where it was like low 20s when I first started last time? Now it's 30. It's a stable 30, 29, 30. Frame pacing looks good. It is kind of juddery. There, it's kind of losing it a bit there. But the line is consistent. The input lag isn't bad. So that's the crowded area. We know out in the open areas that the game could run decently well at 30 frames. Tell you what, I'm going to turn the games... I don't think I can. I was going to try to turn it off, the in-game frame limiter, but you can't. As long as you have VSync on, you have to have it on. Alright, so all of the textures and stuff like that are at medium. If you mess with this stuff, it requires a restart again. And I don't really feel like doing that. So I feel like motion blur is something I can knock up. I can knock up. Let's see, reflection quality, maybe world car detail. Mirror quality, windshield reflection quality, those are two things I'm not really going to notice much of because I don't really play in a cockpit. So let's try just knocking those couple of features up there and see if it affects the game any. So far, the only hitches I'm seeing are loading related, streaming related, I would think. Okay, so it performs okay in the open world. Let's go try a race. Let's go here. Let's fast travel. Okay, load time's not bad. This is old-timey Jeep. Let's try. Let's see how this does in a race. Now, this is, again, not going to be like a stress test because it is sunny outside in this game. It is, you know... Now, that's interesting. How slow that... Wow, okay. I wonder why it's so slow. I wonder if it has something to do with the depth of field there. Let's see in races. Does it let up at all? Yeah, as soon as I start racing, it's up to... Well, it's around 30. Now it's at 30, and now it's stabilized. It's really interesting. Really interesting port here, guys. So you can see everybody behind me. And when I look back, it doesn't, like, slow to a crawl, so it's not that everyone's just got off the screen. That's why it's running stable. Now it's running really well. Huh. Which is good, since it's a racing game. You want the races stacked. The most stable, so... Oh, am I gonna get flagged for the... Still solid. Still a pretty solid experience. $900p, again, medium settings with a couple ticked back up to high. 2x MSAA. FXAA on. The new threaded optimization option is on that they patched in a few months back. And that really, really improved the threading, the multi-threading on the CPU, so it really improved the performance of games. And I think that's one reason that this can run well now on my laptop, because I'll be honest with you, when this game first launched, this laptop was not having it. It just would not cooperate with it. A little hitch there. Nothing game breaking, but kind of ugly. Another hitch. See, these seem more just like streaming issues to me than anything else. They don't seem like real performance related issues. Okay. 88% complete. I would like to try a rainy race full of cars. With like supercars or something instead of this truck, but we'll see what I can do about that. There you go. As soon as it goes to the cinematic camera angles, frame rate drops. So if you can deal with that, I think you got a pretty decent, solid experience there. But this is ugly. No, there's no doubt about it. As soon as you get to the and you can see the windshield reflections are super low res. That drone looked awful. It was made from 17 pixels. But yeah, there you go. That's not too bad, honestly. Let's try another car before I end up signing off here. So let me go to a garage and change cars. Fast traveling, quote unquote fast. Okay, almost there. Come on. Alright, let's see. Garage, my cars. Let's try a hypercar, if I can find one. Let's see here. Got a bunch of cars here. Let's try, there we go. We could try an Audi R8. I think that's enough. The launch is a 10. So let's give the Audi R8 a shot here. So my concern is that if you go too fast and it is having streaming issues, then you start moving too fast for the game to keep up, and the streaming issues will become more predominant. And next thing you know, the frame rate tanks almost permanently. So I'm really interested in seeing if that's the case. Because if that is the case, unfortunately, then that makes this game unplayable like half the time, because you really can't do much to alleviate that. I guess you could drop texture quality again, but you know, you start getting into low-res textures, and that's something I can't tolerate. That's something I won't stand for. Ooh, great handling. Great driving, Don. Alright, so pretty stable performance so far. That line is pretty solid. There's a few occasional dips, but... Now we are in a city area. This is one of the more demanding strips in the game over here. So the fact it's holding up pretty well along this stretch here. Let's see, as soon as I get down into this area with the city over here, that's one of the areas where it constantly tanks the frame rate. Regardless of your system, your frame rate will tank. So, there it goes, down to the 20s. And this is what I was afraid of. Like, I may be moving too quickly for the streaming to be able to keep up. And so you may encounter hitches like this in city areas, they're kind of rare, honestly, as long as you just kind of stay out of these areas. But yeah, they can definitely take a toll. They can definitely impact your experience overall. It wasn't too bad, though. I mean, it dipped a little bit, dipped a few times. But I made it through, and it shot right back up to 30, so, you know, it's pretty consistent. I just murdered someone.
You have arrived at your destination.
Cool, so that's that. Let's jump into a race before I, sign off again. Let's see here. Let's just pick one. Let's see how this works out here. I don't even know if I can use this car to enter that race. Exhibition. Nope. It's another truck race. Let's see here. I'm gonna spend all my money on fast travel. Okay. Let me enter a race, please. Alright. Let us try, let's see. Should I try the Ferrari or stick with the R8? Ferrari's a little faster. Let's go with the Ferrari. Synchronizing Drivatars. I love James Cameron's Drivatar. It's a fantastic film. Okay. Again, a hitching juddery mess as soon as you open the race. 20 frames per second. But I have a hunch as soon as this race starts, boom, 30. Not too bad, honestly. All right, so here we go. I'm getting some cars in front of me now, which is what I wanted. I want to see how this thing holds up under a load. All right, mid-20s, dropping frames a little bit there. Up. Mid-20s. Back to 30. I'm trying to think of anything else I could really like drop quality-wise that would keep it from dipping like that. I just can't think of much because I guess maybe reflection quality? I don't know. Motion blur? I don't think motion blur is that demanding, but we'll try it. So we'll give it a try. We'll see if any of this stuff helps out with these dips, but I have my doubts. Nope, still happening. I'm not dropping it to low. I'm just thinking that there's not much I could possibly do. Like I'm kind of convinced that even if I drop it to low, that these streaming issues are going to persist because it's just my RAM is too slow or something. I don't know. I mean, I am on a solid state drive, so I just don't know. I'm not that technically inclined, but I just feel like even if I... Oh, look at that. How did I miss a checkpoint? Of course. It's right there, Don. But yeah, anyway, my point is I don't think if I dropped it to low, it would change much. Because it's performing pretty consistently. It's just streaming. It's loading issues. And it's just whatever inside my laptop is just not fast enough to deal with however they built this game. That's just how I feel. I don't know. I know it's science and you can't go on feelings with science, but I'm not that smart. So I'll take this though. I think this is pretty decent for an on-the-road kind of experience, you know, for a laptop that I bought three and a half years ago. Oh, watch out. I'm staring up at the numbers, seeing how consistent they are. And there it goes, just losing control. Again, some hitching there. Great drift. So I guess the goal is to just kind of stay in first place, because then you don't run the risk of cars getting on the screen and actually slowing things down. So it's kind of an incentive to win. Your punishment is a terrible frame rate. Now look at this. Remember last time that was dropping down to like 20 FPS. Now it's a solid 30. So there we go. I spoke too soon. I was like, what happened? Why is it consistent now? But I think it's just something you got to put up with. So what do we have here? We have 900p instead of 1080p, 2x MSAA instead of 4. Everything else was dropped pretty much to medium settings. I think I left motion blur at high, but everything else is medium. So I capped it at 30 frames per second, and it looks like it's a pretty consistent experience. If you can live with the drop in settings from the console quality, it's, you know, this is lower quality than the Xbox One can deliver. But then again, I don't think you're taking your Xbox anywhere with you on the road. So if you have a lower spec PC, I think you can play this game and have an enjoyable experience. It's not the most ideal scenario, but the game does run pretty decently on a low-end quad-core CPU and a low-end GPU. Again, my GPU is pretty much the equivalent of an NVIDIA GTX 750 Ti. So there you have it. Just some tweaking. We'll get you where you want to go. And thanks for watching. Until next time, I will bid you adieu. Leave comments below and leave me a recommendation for a game you'd like to see tested. Because I love doing this kind of stuff. I actually really like seeing how games hold up on really less than recommended hardware. So give me some ideas and I'll see what I can do. Thanks, guys. See you.